The GPS DairyCAST features the high-value insights of the GPS Dairy Consulting team's trusted advisors and the owners and managers from the elite dairy farms they serve. These conversations deliver on the GPS Dairy Consulting promise to inspire change and grow leaders.
Welcome to the GPS DairyCAST. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen from the Up-Level Dairy Podcast, and we bring you this episode from the 2026 GPS Herd Manager Retreats, where elite herd managers gather among their peers to share ideas, best practices, and to hear from the experts and GPS team members who are leading the industry. On this episode, GPS Dairy consultant Robb Bender is joined by Marlena Wagner of Jagiello Dairy in Wisconsin to find out how they strategically added 200 cows by growing from within while maintaining a 10% cull rate and reaching 8 pounds of components. All this here today on the GPS DairyCAST.
Well, thank you, Marlena, for being here. You just got off stage talking about your repro success, your expansion planning, all the things going on at your dairy, all the really good results through your expansion. So today we're just going to chat about that, chat about your dairy, kind of where you've come and some of your metrics. So can you maybe just start by talking about you and your journey, leading back to maybe when you were in school and then coming back to the dairy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated high school in 2013, and then I went on to college, did community college at home, around the home area, and then went out to California where I did my bachelor's degree in dairy science at California Polytechnic State University. So I graduated from there in 2017, and always with the full intent to coming back to the home dairy. So I did that in 2017 and came back to the dairy and joined my brother and cousin at home to operate our dairy as the 5th generation.
Awesome. So it's been about 8 years, 9 years. Can you talk about just the scope of your dairy, what you guys do, how many acres you run, cows you milk, just some of those dynamics?
Yeah, so we currently milk about 800 cows. We farm 3,500 acres. We milk 3 times a day, double 12, parallel parlor. All of our replacements are raised on site. So calves and heifers are currently at home.
Excellent. So you mentioned some of your family that's involved as well. Can you give us a little bit more detail on your family involvement? Because you have a pretty extensive family for your dairy, right? So who's all involved?
Yeah, so the dairy is currently still owned by 4th generation owners. The 4th generation consists of my dad and then my mom's 2 brothers. That would be Troy and Dwayne and Bruce. And the 5th generation is fully involved in the dairy, and we currently do all the dairy's daily operations as well as a lot of the management and stuff of the dairy. And that 5th generation involves myself and then my brother Tyler and my cousin Donnie. And Tyler is our farm operations manager and does the dairy's feeding every day. And then Donnie kind of heads up the crop operations, manure management in that area of the business. And I deal with the herd side of it, the calves, heifers, cows, and people.
Excellent. So 4th generation is ownership and involved in probably the bigger picture decisions, right?
Yep.
Versus you and your brother and cousin do most of the work on a day-to-day basis for the business, right? And do a lot of the management. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. We meet with all the consultants, do all the meeting, do all the day-to-day stuff. And for the most part, I would say we are continuing the vision of the dairy, and we take those ideas to the 4th generation that still owns it to get their approval in order to do some of the bigger type stuff.
You came back to the dairy in 2017, and more recently you guys went through some expansion, right?
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about what you did, what you built, what you accomplished in that time period?
Yeah, so last year kind of reached our peak of our current facilities. Everything was pretty maxed out and pretty full. We were probably about 160% overcrowded. The cows were doing very well, but we kind of feel like we reached that potential of where can we go from here. And it was either expand or kind of find the next place to go. And as a family, we decided that because there is a lot of us involved and we were here and ready to continue the dairy, expansion was the next option. So we kind of got the approval from the milk plant, which was a big hang up on potential expansion, and they allowed that. So with that, we just kind of tossed around what that expansion was going to look like. What could we financially bite off, as a management team bite off, and what would make the most sense as a next step in the dairy. And eventually kind of settled on something that we already had. It was identical freestall to what we already had in a very simple spot, so to speak. I mean, it was right in line with what we already had. And for us, it was just a very economical and most efficient way for us to add 200 cows without a lot of change. So it was kind of just that stepping stone to what's to come, I guess, for
Yep.
us.
So 290 sandbed installs, and then you upgraded the parlor a little bit as well,
Yep.
along with that
Yep.
same time frame?
Yeah, so in that same time frame, if it wasn't crazy enough to plan and build a barn, we decided we were going to upgrade our parlor as well. With the expansion, we were getting a second return lane put on. We had a single one, and we were putting on a second one. So we thought it'd be a good time to replace the parlor as well, because we could utilize one versus the other.
Sure.
And we cut our parlor off at the base and put a brand new Bomatic, same size, double 12, right on top of it with nice stainless steel cabinets. And it's really been beneficial in repairs, less repairs, and just the milking efficiencies. It's been really good.
So through all this, over the past year, you guys had a lot of change, right? You built a barn, you added cows, you changed the parlor. Can you talk about some of your herd metrics that you've really succeeded on? Because I think they're pretty incredible. At least they're incredible to everybody else looking in. For you, it's probably just another day. But can you talk about like some of your big herd metrics that are big wins for you and your dairy?
Yeah, sure. So last year, like I said, through the craziness of the expansion and everything, we've been fortunate to have a very healthy and high-producing herd. But even last year, through that expansion, we averaged 105 pounds of fluid milk, a 60 somatic cell for the whole year, and 7.9 pounds of combined fat and protein, and 119 pounds of energy-corrected milk. So, yeah, I was pretty happy to see that. On the repro side, we had a 37% preg rate or 50% conception rate, all while averaging a 10% cull rate last year. So
yeah, that's incredible.
that was a win.
Yeah, it's just interesting how for you, it's just another day, right? Your standards are very high, which is awesome. That's great. And you hit these metrics that are just almost unbelievable, right? Especially during an expansion. That's what's cool about it. I mean, hitting a 10% cull rate is almost unbelievable. And that includes your death loss in there as well, right? But then to do all that and still hit the production goals, hit the repro goals, hit all those things, milk quality goals, right? That's really cool to see. And it's not something a lot of people can say. So those numbers kind of helped fuel your expansion too, right?
Yep.
So can you talk a little bit about your philosophy around when you expanded, kind of your mindset around buying cows versus not buying cows, or kind of what you wanted to do there?
Yeah, so when we started the conversations about expansion, obviously right away we got all of our consultants involved, you included, on what that's going to look like and how are we going to do that. And I think for us, like, we took that unconventional approach. We kind of had it in our mind that we wanted to grow from within. Our parents did it. We've been a closed herd. Can we do it? We have good milk quality, and it's just something that we kind of wanted to maintain. So when we first started those conversations, we got a lot of pushback on, nope, you need to buy cows.
Including from me, maybe?
From pretty much everybody. It was a very, like, eyebrow raising, I guess, around the table, and we said, no, we don't want to buy cows. But so we decided the price of cows were crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The bird flu was going around. What could scare you more? It was just one of those things that we didn't really want to do. So we turned to our geneticists right away and said, can we turn up the inventory? Can we grow from within? That's something we needed to start prior. So we changed our breeding strategy. We went from 18 heifer calves a month to 35 heifer calves a month that we were keeping. And we did a lot of stuff on the cow side to come up with that strategic breeding, because we still wanted to maintain the good repro. We just didn't want to throw a bunch of sex semen in and see what would happen. And at the time, like, we were maintaining for a while, so we were making a lot of rapid genetic progress, and we wanted to continue that. So it's trying to find that balance of not giving up one or the other, but to be able to grow. With our geneticist's help, we came up with a breeding strategy that allowed us to do that, and that really helped fill the barn, along with the 10% cull rate.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, that really helped us fill the barn.
Sure, okay. So when did you start making those decisions around heifer inventory, or your breeding decisions to get your heifer inventory higher? I think you said you went from 17 or 18 a month to 35, right? When did all that happen?
So the whole expansion project, by the time we finally got to it, it was like a 2 to 2.5 year planning process for us to decide. Like, we've been talking and kind of just got to that point, and it was probably a good 2.5 years before we actually pulled the pin and actually expanded. So when we first started talking about that, I had mentioned it to Levi, our geneticist, about we need to change I think we met as a group and in our meetings and stuff, and like, okay, we need to change the breeding program. We do realize it takes 2 years and 9 months for them to get into the herd. So we need to be on top of this right away before. So I would say it was a good 2.5 years prior that we had started those conversations.
Yep. So you sort of had the increased heifer inventory there already, or at least in the pipeline when you populated the barn, right?
Yeah, they were in the pipeline. It wasn't that we built the barn and those all came in.
Yeah.
We're still getting to that phase. But I mean, I think the fill of the barn really came from the cull rate being 10%.
Right,
We
absolutely.
filled with a lot of the cows that we were selling prior. But yeah, so our pipeline is stacked, and we're good for where we're at. We'll probably balance out for a little bit, and then the future is to hopefully grow again.
GPS Dairy Consulting goes beyond nutrition by offering tools and resources, broad multidisciplined experience, and a collaborative philosophy across a range of consulting services that will make your business more successful. How will GPS consultants do that? By collaborating with you and your team to solve challenges and create successes while achieving sustainable and profitable results, by fostering personal growth and leadership development, and by inspiring continuous change and improvement in your people, systems, and results. GPS Dairy Consulting LLC will go beyond nutrition to help you achieve your most challenging goals. Learn more and connect with a GPS consultant at gpsdairy.com.
So through all this, you talked about your heifer inventory, some of that. But on the herd side for repro, you mentioned a 37% preg rate, I think 50% conception rate, right? Really good metrics. What else did you do repro-wise on the herd end? I think you incorporated some new technology. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and how that helped your herd?
Yeah, so we had the Alta Cow Watch system. So we mainly put that in, that's quite a few years now, but we mainly put it in for the health event stuff, the health data. And over time, it kind of evolved into the health event data is really great, but the heat detection stuff is also really useful. And prior to expansion, we had a really, really good breeder. He just was really good at tail chalking, and it was new technology. With the expansion, we ended up having to transition to a different breeder, and he fully embraced the Alta Cow Watch system and that heat detection data. And I think that really revolutionized the way that we were able to find cows and breed cows. We also, prior to expansion, increased our voluntary wait period. So we went from a 65-day, we've always kind of been at that, and we were getting cows pregnant really quickly. So we thought, okay, let's increase it, capture a little bit more peak milk, and then if it happens and cows' lactations get a little bit extended, it's going to help fill the barn a little bit on the backside.
Sure.
So we went ahead and increased the voluntary wait period to 75 days. And what we found was actually the cows became pregnant just as quickly. Days of conception stayed the same, and we averaged at 100 days open. So hopefully we captured the more peak milk, but the repro efficiency pretty much stayed the same.
So it worked pretty well, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk about how you use Alta Cow Watch for the repro side of it? In terms of like do you use it for first service, or do you exclusively use it after first service for catching cows in heat? First service is synchronized, right?
Yes. First service is all double off sync.
Yeah. Okay.
So we don't do like any cherry picking. Like he's not breeding off of the collar. If they show up on the collar as being in heat, it's usually with the timed protocol. But then after first service, if a cow isn't pregnant, she's eligible for that heat-based breeding. So then anything on the collar system, she can be bred off of. Otherwise, if she doesn't even show a sign of heat, then she's ran through our resync program. But there's a lot of cows. 44% of our cows on a repeat breeding are bred within that 18 to 24-day window. So it's catching a lot of cows, and there's a lot less that we're having to wait till preg check to find open.
So you're trying to use, if I'm understanding you right, you're trying to use the advantages of both systems, right? So for first service, you're doing the highest fertility program you can to get the most cows pregnant using double off sync, right? And then for repeats, you're trying to use Alta Cow Watch to get the non-pregnancy diagnosis earlier, to catch them in heat early, right?
Correct.
Before you would palpate them.
Yep.
And get semen back into them and improve fertility that way, right?
Right.
Moving forward.
Yeah, and there's that select few that go to preg check, and going through the resync because they're cystic or there's different challenges. But there is that smaller portion that the cow watch system doesn't pick up on.
You referenced various times throughout your presentation different people involved. Can you talk about who's involved on your team from an advisory standpoint? I think you talked about geneticists and some of that. Can you kind of expand on that?
Yeah, so we have a solid team of consultants all throughout the dairy, but specifically on the repro side, Maverick Genetics is independent geneticist Levi out of California, somebody I met when I was in college, and he kind of the nuts and bolts of all what we do on the genetics part of it, using our genomics and the matings, and he's got softwares that kind of do all that. And then even on the data analysis side on Repro, like it is a very in-depth, once a month I meet and we get a very in-depth analysis of what is going on the Repro side, which for me is super helpful. Repro is not really my strong suit, and it's really helpful that he puts that all right in front of you and you can just take that bird's eye view once a month of it.
He's helping you pull semen from multiple different suppliers, right? Because he's an independent, that's part of the
Yep. So
program.
I think that's unique. We don't have one semen company that we're using 100%.
Yep.
So based on the genomic matings, with a high focus on inbreeding right now, we have a very high focus on that. He's selecting from all the studs, and it's basically who mates the best with our cows.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's who we're approaching to kind of get a semen price, what's available, and creating a nice low blend price of a good group of bulls.
Awesome. I think that I encourage you to mention that because it is fairly unique, right? So often dairies are committed to one stud or one supplier, right?
Yep.
And your approach is just a little bit different. You're using the independent advice, trying to get the best of a few different worlds, right? In terms of the semen quality.
For sure, definitely, yeah.
That's cool. Who else is sort of on the team?
And then Valley Vet Clinic, we work really closely with Dr. John Garber and Dr. Brian Stamfel, and they just kind of come on board for all of our meetings, like whole farm wise, all of our meetings. And 8 years ago, pushed us in the direction of the double off sync, helped us kind of facilitate that.
Yep.
And then every year, Dr. John is putting together a very in-depth analysis of our annual repro review. So that's been 8 years running, and it's really cool to see the progress and all that over every year, year after year. So they just really, meet, and the herd check, they're there every Friday for herd check. So it's just really instrumental, their advice and all they do to really care about our dairy and help us continue to grow and move forward. And then lastly, GPS Dairy Consulting, Robb, you have been very instrumental as well in pushing us, I guess, like challenging my brother and my cousin and I, and the dairy as a whole, I guess, even the older generation, as much as they don't like it, pushing us to see outside the box, see outside our box, so to speak.
Yep.
And also on the repro side, you have knowledge in a lot of the areas. So, and then setting our cows up nutritionally, like feeding and the nutrition part of it is a bottom line. None of the other stuff works if they're not dialed in on all cylinders. So very appreciative of that.
I do think the team dynamic is important, right? Because we don't, as a consulting team for your dairy, we don't always agree necessarily, right? We don't always see it exactly the same.
Yep.
But I would say it's a very healthy relationship, right? Because you bring ideas forward, you talk about them, you discuss, you come up with different solutions. Sometimes you guys agree, sometimes you don't like it, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the consultants agree, you guys may not, or vice versa, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you kind of go back and forth, but it ultimately leads to a consensus. You make a decision and you move forward on initiatives, right? And so when you think about how far your dairy has come, I'm not sure when we implemented it, but there was 3X milking in there, right?
Yeah, there's been a lot of change.
BMR was in there.
Yeah.
There's, iterations of heifer growing. There's all these genomic tests. There's so many things that, at the time, it felt like a hard decision, right? Because we talked about them, but you just keep working through them, discussing them, and you eventually make a decision and move on something, right? And the success is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, a lot of the credit goes to the older generation of, we had a good dairy, and they did a good job, did a lot of things right, but we were kind of at that standstill. And then when we all kind of came back and got that, like you said, that group of consultants and that dynamic where we continued to improve and do things. It was cool to see, like, there's been a lot of changes in the last 8 years. Like, the dairy has really evolved and really grown, and it is cool to look back on those reviews and those different things and see, holy man, here's where we were and here's where we are, and the pains in between. Like, there's definitely a lot of pains, but
right.
a lot of, oh, Rob's not going to be happy about this. A lot of those type of moments, but it is cool to see how far we've come.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing that's cool is you guys don't wait very long to make a change, right? Through you guys as well as your consulting team, we're watching numbers closely, right? And if something isn't right, you know, you have very high standards, right? If something's not where you want it, you're bringing it forward and we're talking about it. We may not always do something immediately, right? But we're watching it, and you're not waiting, you know, till the end of the year or whatever. Like, you want to act now. You want to fix a problem now. And so you're on top of it, and you don't let things linger, right?
Yeah, sometimes I think my brother and cousin would prefer, they would be like,
just wait a little bit. Yeah.
Just wait a little bit, or is it your standard, or whose standard are we looking at here? Is it really that bad? But yeah, we really do value the advice and stuff of our consulting groups. We value your guys' opinion, and if you're presenting something, and we want to try it and see what we can do to be better.
Yeah, no, it's been a fun journey for sure. So this kind of ties into, all this stuff ties into, you have a little bit of a family motto or a family saying, right? Do you want to share it? It's moving.
Remembering the past, moving toward the future.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Not many people have that driving vision, right? And so, like, hearing you talk about that, that's a really cool way to guide your dairy and move forward. So one last question I wanted to ask. So when you look back at all this stuff over the last 10 years or 9 years since you came back to the dairy, what are some of, like, your biggest challenges as well as your biggest wins you feel through the whole process? If you just kind of reflect on the whole thing.
Yeah, I guess I feel like some of the biggest wins are a lot of those little changes that we made, I guess, that have become the big things. I guess that they're not little, you know, the 3 times a day milking, just constantly the genetic improvement, constantly doing the little day-to-day things right that have gotten us to where we are. The most recent expansion was pretty cool that the 5th generation was able to be involved in that. But with all that, like, I guess some of the greatest challenges now is staying sustainable and, you know, really understanding the scope of the dairy and what we're doing and how we're doing things. You know, the decisions that we want to make maybe sometimes aren't always the most sustainable for the dairy. And it's kind of getting that mindset of finding the balance, I guess, of what we want to do, but what is really sustainable for the dairy long term.
Sure.
And trying to get to that next phase the most sustainable way possible. And we've got a lot of insight and a lot of different meetings from our outside consultants that have really kind of brought that to light, that can't always just keep doing what we've done in the past, even though that's what's worked.
Right.
But it's definitely a challenge to think a little bit differently, and as we go forward and get bigger, and it's like the different things that we haven't had to experience before, how are we going to handle them, and what's it going to take? Because maybe those things of the past aren't going to work anymore. Right. So it's embracing what's to come.
That's a great mentality. I really respect that. I respect all the work you guys have put into it. The results sort of speak for themselves. Not many dairies can talk about 10% cull rate, almost 8 pounds of components, right? I think now you're exceeding 8 pounds of components, right? Really good repro, really good genetics. Everything is just firing on all cylinders. So it's really cool to see and have your hard work and your family's hard work kind of come to fruition. So that's fantastic. So thank you for sharing today. Appreciate you being a part of this. And
thank you for this opportunity.
Absolutely.
You just heard from GPS Dairy consultant Robb Bender and Marlena Wagner of Jagiello Dairy here on the GPS DairyCAST. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen from the Uplevel Dairy Podcast, and we look forward to seeing you back here again for the next GPS DairyCAST.
The GPS DairyCAST features conversations that deliver on the GPS Dairy Consulting promise to inspire change and grow leaders. If this GPS DairyCAST has you looking for more ways to become an elite dairy producer, find more information in our show notes on how you can add a GPS advisor to your team.